The millionaire divorces, his wife not knowing she's pregnant. 18 years later, his expensive ex calls for help. He thought she vanished from his life forever, until fate brought her back, bleeding in his hospital, with a child who had his eyes. Now, as a single lie unravels 17 years of deception, a billionaire faces the one truth he never dared to ask. Was she protecting herself, or the daughter he never knew was his? In a storm of betrayal, buried love, and family secrets that could ruin everything, he'll risk his empire and his heart to win back the woman who once swore never to forgive him. Because sometimes the blood that binds isn't just family, it's fate. Now sit back, relax, and watch this story unfold. Every twist, every tear, every heartbeat. Don't blink and don't miss a single second. New York never truly slept. Its skyline glittered like 1,000 unshed secrets, and from the top floor of Knight Enterprises, Adrian Knight ruled them all. The man was a living embodiment of control. 31, immaculately dressed, with eyes sharp enough to silence an entire boardroom. His words were few, but each carried weight. His time was gold, and no one dared waste it. Inside his glass empire, whispers traveled faster than profit margins. Mr. Knight doesn't smile. Mr. Knight doesn't forgive. Mr. Knight doesn't feel. They were all true, until she walked in. It was Monday morning when the HR manager stepped nervously into his office. "Sir, this is your new assistant, Maya Brown." The woman who followed didn't belong to his world of glass and cold precision. She was soft light, a calm presence in a storm of ambition. Warm brown skin glowed gently under the white lights. Her hair was tied back neatly, her eyes bright but grounded. Her dress was simple, nothing luxurious, nothing loud, and yet she seemed to pull the air toward her without even trying. Adrian glanced up from his laptop, barely sparing a moment. He nodded curtly. "Fine. You can start today." Her voice, when she spoke, carried a melody of humility. "Thank you, Mr. Knight." He didn't reply. He didn't have to. But the day somehow didn't feel the same anymore. She worked quietly, efficient, punctual, accurate. No perfume, no arrogance, just sincerity wrapped in silence. When others tried to impress, she only focused. When others trembled under pressure, she breathed through it. And Adrian noticed. God help him, he noticed. By the second week, he realized something strange. He was arriving earlier, leaving later, all for reasons he didn't dare name. She made the air around his office softer. The rhythm of the place changed, subtle but undeniable. He would glance up from his desk sometimes and find her biting her lip in concentration, tapping a pen, brushing a strand of hair aside. And that small human gesture burned into his mind like a forbidden thought. He told himself it was curiosity. He told himself it was respect for a hard-working employee. But late at night, when the office emptied and silence became his only companion, the truth started whispering to him. She made him feel something he'd long buried. He tried to ignore it, tried to drown it in work, but emotion had a way of finding cracks, even in the walls of the most ruthless hearts. Days blurred into weeks. Meetings became background noise, and every time she knocked gently on his glass door, he felt a pulse of something alive, dangerous, unfamiliar. She never looked at him too long, never crossed a line, and maybe that's what made her irresistible. One Friday, a storm rolled over the city. The skyline vanished behind sheets of rain. Most employees left early, running toward warmth and shelter, but not Maya. From his office, he saw her still typing, eyes heavy but determined. The clock hit 10. The rain outside sounded like 1,000 tiny confessions against the glass. Adrian leaned back in his chair, watching her through the transparent wall. Her reflection shimmered against the storm, fragile, beautiful, utterly out of place. Something broke inside him. He stood, walked to the door, and opened it quietly. The sound of rain filled the space between them. "Maya," he said, his voice low, steady. She looked up, surprised. "Sir?" He stepped closer. The soft light from her desk lamp haloed her face. "You're still working." She smiled faintly, weary but sincere. "The report needs to be done by morning. I didn't want you waiting." He studied her, the honesty in her tone, the quiet pride in her work. In a world of people chasing titles, she was simply doing her best. For the first time in years, Adrian didn't see an employee. He saw a person, and for a man who had spent his life owning everything, that realization shook him. His breath slowed. His chest felt strangely tight. The city outside roared with thunder, but inside that glass office, it was only them, a storm of silence and unspoken emotion. He took one step closer, then another. Maya's fingers froze on the keyboard. He was too near now, close enough for her to smell his cologne, sharp and clean, close enough to feel the heat of his gaze. Her heart stumbled, her throat went dry. Adrian's voice dropped, rough with something unfamiliar. "You make this place feel different." She blinked, unsure if she heard him right. "Different, sir?" He nodded, his eyes locked on hers, eyes that usually cut through deals, not feelings. "Yes. For years, I've lived surrounded by glass, numbers, and people who only wanted what I had." He paused, voice softening. "But you make me feel human again." The words hung between them, fragile, dangerous, impossible. Maya's breath caught. She didn't move, didn't speak. She didn't know if her boss just said what she thought he did. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the glass walls, and in that blinding white light, Maya realized her life had just changed. But whether it was the beginning of love or destruction, she couldn't yet tell. For a long second, silence filled the room, only the sound of rain tapping against the glass. Maya's pen trembled slightly in her hand. She turned to face him slowly, her brown eyes searching his face for a trace of jest. But there was none. Adrian Knight stood just inches away, his sharp jaw set, his gaze unwavering. The same man who terrified board members now looked strangely human. "Sir, you shouldn't say things like that," Maya murmured, her voice soft but steady. "It's inappropriate." Adrian's lips curved faintly. "Then consider it a mistake I don't regret." He turned and walked toward the window, his reflection merging with the city lights, powerful, lonely, unreachable. The next morning she tried to convince herself it was nothing. Exhaustion, perhaps. But something had shifted. The air between them was heavier, charged. He began finding reasons to visit her desk, questions about reports he never read before, coffee breaks he never took. Once he appeared beside her just to ask, "Do you like your job here?" "Yes," she replied carefully. "I like working for someone who values discipline." He smiled faintly. "Then I'll try to be worthy of that compliment." The rumor mill at Knight Enterprises spun faster than the elevators. Whispers followed Maya in the corridors. The boss's favorite, the brown girl with the billionaire's attention. She pretended not to hear. She kept her head down, her notes precise, her smile polite. But inside, a quiet storm brewed. One evening, while collecting documents from his office, she said softly, "You shouldn't be so kind to me, Mr. Knight. People are talking." Adrian looked up from his laptop. "Let them. I don't care about their noise." "But I do," she said, meeting his eyes. "I worked hard to be respected here. I don't want pity or assumptions." His voice lowered. "You think my respect is pity?" Her heart skipped. "No, sir, I just don't belong in your world." He rose, slow and deliberate, the distance between them shrinking. "You belong where your heart takes you, Maya." The words lingered in the air long after he left the room. Days melted into weeks. Their dynamic became something delicate, unspoken but undeniable. He stopped barking orders. She stopped calling him sir every time. Sometimes their conversations drifted beyond work, her mother's recipes, his childhood without warmth, their shared dislike for loneliness. Late nights at the office grew longer. Sometimes he'd bring her coffee, the exact blend she liked, though she never told him which one it was. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her reflection in the glass wall, a look in his eyes that was both wonder and restraint. One night, during a power outage, the office went dark except for the city lights below. Adrian found her at the window, her phone flashlight dim against the skyline. "You're still here? Deadlines don't wait for the sun," she said with a faint laugh. He walked closer. "Maya, do you ever get tired of proving yourself?" She glanced at him. "Every day, but I don't know any other way to survive." He nodded slowly, voice softer now. "Maybe you shouldn't have to survive. Maybe you deserve to live." For a heartbeat, they just looked at each other, the ruthless CEO and the woman who somehow disarmed him without even trying. After that night, something inside both of them gave way. He began showing up with small gestures, a bouquet left on her desk after a long day, a quiet seat beside her during lunch, a coat draped over her shoulders when the office turned cold. She tried to keep the walls up, but his sincerity slipped through the cracks. One Friday evening, when most employees had left, he found her in the break room, humming softly while typing on her laptop. "Still working?" She smiled without looking up. "Someone has to make sure your empire doesn't collapse," he chuckled. "You're the only person who dares to talk to me like that. I talk to everyone like that. Then I must be lucky." Their eyes met, and the silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was alive. Days turned into shared coffee cups, quiet dinners at the small Italian place near the office, late-night talks about dreams neither had confessed before. When she laughed, his walls cracked. When he looked at her, she felt seen, not as an employee, not as a woman judged by her skin, but as something rare. Still, she reminded him often, "You're my boss. This shouldn't happen." He always answered the same way, "You're more than that, Maya." One night, as autumn painted the city gold, Adrian found her standing alone on the terrace of his penthouse. She had come to deliver some files, but he knew it wasn't about work anymore. He stepped closer, the breeze lifting a strand of her hair. "Do you believe hearts care about titles?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "They should. It keeps people safe." He smiled faintly. "Mine doesn't." Before she could answer, his hand brushed hers, tentative, trembling, real. She didn't pull away. Not this time. It was slow, careful, a connection born not of impulse, but understanding. The man who ruled boardrooms with iron control was undone by the warmth of one woman's decency. And she, who promised herself she'd never dream above her station, found herself falling anyway. Weeks later, under the soft glow of his office chandelier, Adrian took her hand. "Maya Brown," he said, voice deep, trembling at the edges. "You've made me forget who I was, and I never want to remember again." Her lips parted, heart pounding. "Adrian, I don't belong in your world." He smiled. "You are my world." When he knelt and opened the small velvet box, her breath caught. The diamond sparkled like a captured tear of light. She tried to speak, but words failed. Only tears came, tears of disbelief, of fear, of a love she had tried to deny. He slid the ring onto her finger, his hand steady, eyes locked with hers. "Say yes." A whisper left her lips. "Yes." But before she could even savor the moment, a sharp vibration broke the silence. His phone buzzed on the desk. The screen glowed with a single name. Mother. He silenced it without a thought, too lost in her trembling smile. Across the city, however, Evelyn Knight stared at her own reflection in fury. Gripping her phone so tightly the veins on her hands showed. "Over my dead body," she whispered, voice trembling with venom. "Over my dead body will my son marry her." As Adrian kissed Maya's hand beneath the soft chandelier light, his mother's call went unanswered. But destiny had already picked up. In the quiet of that ring's shimmer, a war had just begun. The wedding happened without fanfare, no cameras, no applause, just two hearts defying the rules of a world built on power and bloodlines. In a small chapel tucked between city streets, Maya Brown became Mrs. Adrian Knight. Her dress was simple but radiant, her veil trembling slightly as if even the air hesitated to touch her. When he slipped the ring on her finger, she felt the weight of more than gold. She felt a promise that love could exist even inside a cage of glass and greed. For a brief moment, she believed fairy tales weren't lies. Afterward, they rode back to the Knight mansion, the same estate where Adrian had grown up, where every inch of marble and gold screamed perfection. The iron gates opened slowly, like the jaws of something ancient. Maya tried to smile, holding his hand as they entered. But something about the air shifted. Evelyn Knight stood at the top of the staircase, regal as ever, pearls gleaming against her pale skin. Her expression didn't show rage, only a cruel calmness that felt sharper than any shout. "Welcome home," she said, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Maya bowed slightly, her voice soft. "Thank you, Mrs. Knight." Evelyn's eyes traveled over her, from the modest wedding band to her brown skin, to the humility in her posture, and she nodded once. "I suppose you'll learn your place soon enough," she murmured, and turned away. That was the beginning of the quiet war. Days passed like a test Maya didn't sign up for. Evelyn never shouted, never accused. She didn't need to. Her weapons were silence, disapproval, and words dipped in honey. At breakfast, Evelyn would smile and say, "Oh, Maya dear, that dress is brave." At dinner, "You must miss your small apartment." So much simpler, I imagine. And when guests came, Evelyn would slip in phrases like, "Yes, she worked for Adrian. Such a hard-working young woman. He's so generous, isn't he?" Each word was a knife disguised as kindness, and Maya, raised to respect her elders, took every cut in silence. Adrian tried to protect her, but his world was relentless. Meetings, investors, mergers. He would come home late, tired, the smell of ink and rain still on his suit. She'd wait by the window, pretending to read, pretending not to worry. He'd kiss her forehead and say, "It'll calm down soon." But soon never came. Still, she didn't complain. She filled her days with little things, tending the garden, writing thank-you notes, baking small pastries that reminded her of home. She wanted warmth in a house that had forgotten what love sounded like. Sometimes, when she passed the hallway mirrors, she caught her reflection and barely recognized herself. The girl who once walked confidently into an office now walked on tiptoe through her own home. One night, while Adrian worked in his study, Evelyn invited Maya for tea. The room smelled of jasmine and venom. Evelyn poured her a cup, her tone sweet. "You're adjusting well, I hope." "I'm trying, ma'am." "Good," Evelyn said, stirring her tea slowly. "Just remember, some of us are born into this world, and others try to buy their way in." Maya looked down, her hands trembling around the cup. "I didn't buy anything. I only loved your son." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Love is cheap, dear. Reputation isn't." The tea tasted bitter that night. A week later, Evelyn called a man to the mansion, a discreet, gray-haired private investigator named Dalton Pierce. He stood in her parlor, notebook in hand. "I want everything," she said quietly. "Her past, her family, her finances, her friends. Anything I can use." He raised a brow. "And if there's nothing to find?" Evelyn's lips curved. "Then create something." Back in her room, Maya never knew. She was busy trying to make the mansion feel like home. fresh flowers on the table, laughter in the kitchen, tiny notes tucked into Adrian's suit pockets. Her love was sincere, and sincerity often blinds you to malice. But the walls had ears. The staff carried whispers like wind. By the end of the month, the house felt colder, not from weather, but from the weight of unseen schemes. One morning, Maya set the breakfast table herself. She wanted it to be perfect. His favorite coffee, eggs done just right, a handwritten note beside his plate. When Adrian came down, she greeted him with a smile, but before she could sit, her world tilted. The room spun, her vision blurred. The plate in her hand slipped and shattered across the floor. "Maya!" Adrian caught her before she fell, panic ripping through his calm composure. Her skin was pale, her pulse faint. Without a second thought, he lifted her into his arms and rushed her to the car. The drive to the hospital was a blur of sirens, rain, and her trembling fingers clutching his sleeve. "Stay with me," he whispered over and over, his voice breaking in a way he hadn't allowed it to in years. When the doctor finally emerged from the room, Adrian's heart hammered in his chest. "She's stable," the doctor said with a gentle smile. "And she might be pregnant." For the first time in months, Adrian's face lit up with raw, unguarded joy. He pressed his hands to his mouth, disbelief giving way to laughter. "Pregnant?" "Yes," the doctor nodded. "We'll confirm after a few more tests, but it looks likely." Adrian went inside, sat by her bed, and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "Maya," he whispered, tears stinging his eyes, "we're going to be parents." Her lips curved weakly into a smile. "Parents," she repeated softly, the word tasting like a miracle. He kissed her hand and stayed by her side all night. But in another corner of the city, Evelyn Knight stood in her private office, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was calm, collected, the voice of a woman used to getting what she wanted. "Switch the reports," Evelyn said coldly. "I want that joy destroyed before it grows." And as the line disconnected, the storm outside the mansion began again. Only this time it wasn't rain. It was war. The night felt heavy, like the sky itself knew something was about to break. Maya stood by the window of their penthouse, one hand resting over her belly. A quiet smile curved on her lips, a secret blooming quietly inside her. A life. A heartbeat, a miracle. She imagined Adrian's face when she told him, the way his hard expression would melt, the way his eyes, those sharp, distant eyes, would finally soften completely for her. She'd bought the tiniest pair of white baby shoes that afternoon, hiding them inside a silver gift box tied with a blue ribbon. Her heart raced every time she glanced at it. Tonight, she thought, would be perfect. But somewhere across the mansion, another kind of plan was already unfolding. Evelyn Knight moved like a ghost through the hallways, elegant, precise, and merciless. The forged report in her hand gleamed under the soft light. Her lips curved in satisfaction. When she reached Adrian's study, she didn't knock. She stormed in, fury perfectly rehearsed. "Adrian," she hissed, throwing the folder across his desk. "You need to see what your so-called wife has been hiding." He looked up from his laptop, brows narrowing. "What is this?" "Proof," Evelyn said, her voice trembling with disgust. "That woman deceived you." She jabbed a manicured finger at the papers. "She's infertile, Adrian. The doctors confirmed it. She can't give you children, and she knew it before she married you." Adrian froze. His mind stuttered. The words didn't make sense. Infertile? No. Maya wouldn't lie about something like that. But then he looked at the papers, the hospital seal, the doctor's signature. His throat tightened. The air in the room thickened with his mother's poisonous calm. "She married you for your name," Evelyn continued softly, "not your love. People like her. They see men like you as ladders. And when you stop climbing, they find another one." Adrian gritted his teeth, anger rising fast and blind. His chest felt tight, betrayal wrapping around him like chains. "Maya wouldn't," he whispered, but his voice broke before he could finish. "Open your eyes, son," Evelyn pressed, laying a cold hand on his shoulder. "She's been playing you, just like her kind always does." Adrian's silence said enough. His mother's poison had reached the bloodstream. Moments later, Maya entered the study, holding the little silver box behind her back. Her eyes were bright, her smile nervous but full of hope. "Adrian," she said softly, "I have something." "Don't," he cut her off, standing abruptly. His voice carried a sharp edge that sliced through the air. He grabbed the papers from his desk and threw them toward her. "Explain this." She blinked, confused. The folder hit the floor, papers scattering like broken promises. "What is this?" she asked, bending down to pick one up. Her eyes widened when she saw the hospital letterhead. "Adrian, this isn't real," she said, voice trembling. "Please, you have to believe me." "Believe you?" He let out a bitter laugh. "You lied to me about everything. You married me knowing you couldn't give me a family." Her heart dropped. "No," she whispered, clutching her stomach protectively. "That's not true. Stop," he barked. "Don't play another game, Maya. You got what you wanted, my name, my money, but you don't get to play victim now." Tears streamed down her face, but she stood her ground. "Adrian, please. You said hearts don't care for status. You said I was your world." He turned away, fists clenched. "Maybe I was wrong." Her breath hitched. She reached for him, desperate. "I'm carrying your—" "Enough!" he shouted, slamming a pen onto the desk. He scribbled his signature across the divorce papers in one harsh motion. "Get out!" The word hit her harder than any slap. She stared at him, eyes wide, heart breaking piece by piece. "Adrian." He didn't look up. He was already somewhere else, trapped in the cage of his own pride. Maya slowly placed the small silver box on the desk, the baby shoes she'd bought to surprise him. He didn't notice. He didn't see the trembling of her hands. He didn't hear the silent goodbye caught in her throat. She walked out through the storm, the sky weeping as she did. Rain drenched her hair, soaked her dress, blurred her vision. Each step felt heavier than the last, her breath uneven, her chest tight. She clutched her stomach instinctively, whispering to the life inside her, "Hold on, please, hold on." The pain came suddenly, sharp and merciless. She gasped, leaning against a lamppost, her fingers trembling as thunder rolled across the city. Behind her, the night mansion's lights glowed like distant stars, unreachable, uncaring. Inside one of those windows, Adrian sat alone, staring at the untouched gift box on his desk. Outside, Maya collapsed to her knees in the rain, one hand gripping her belly as the pain intensified. The silver box sat unopened in the study, the baby shoes waiting quietly inside, a truth still unknown. A heartbeat still unheard. The rain had washed away the night, but not the memories. By dawn, the city woke to its usual hum, taxis, sirens, distant voices, yet somewhere on its edge a woman lay trembling beneath a broken streetlight. Maya's lips were pale, her dress clinging to her like a second skin, her breath shallow and uneven. She pressed a hand to her stomach, whispering through the pain, "Please, stay with me." The world around her blurred, headlights streaking like ghosts, rain falling in silver curtains. A stranger stopped, a kind old woman from a nearby bakery, wrapping her shawl around Maya's shoulders. "Hold on, dear. We'll get you help." Maya couldn't answer. The edges of her world faded to black. When she awoke, the smell of disinfectant filled the air. White walls, a soft beeping beside her. She blinked. Hospital lights stung her eyes. A nurse smiled faintly. "You're lucky, sweetheart. You and your baby made it." Her baby. The words hit her chest like light breaking through a storm. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks as the nurse placed a small bundle in her arms. A tiny hand curled around her finger, fragile, perfect, alive. "Hello," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. "My little miracle." She named her Ariana, the name she had once whispered to herself when dreaming of motherhood. It meant holy, pure, silver light. Everything Maya wanted this child to be, untouched by the cruelty that had crushed her own heart. Days passed. She healed slowly, her body aching, but her spirit anchored by the warmth in her arms. Each time Ariana's eyes opened, Maya felt purpose return. Thin, quiet, but real. When the doctor mentioned contacting her husband, Maya's voice hardened for the first time. "No," she said firmly. "He doesn't exist in our world anymore." She left the hospital with nothing but a baby blanket, a borrowed coat, and a silent vow. No one would ever find her. Not the tabloids, not the Knights, not Adrian. She found refuge in a small town 2 hours away, a place where no one cared about last names or headlines. The locals called her Miss Brown and didn't ask questions. She worked days at a bookstore, nights sewing dresses for a nearby boutique. Money was tight, but love was enough. Each morning she'd press a kiss to Ariana's forehead and whisper, "We don't need the world. We have each other." Years blurred into seasons, laughter in small apartments, scraped knees, birthday candles glowing on homemade cakes. Ariana grew into a bright, curious girl with her mother's patience and her father's piercing eyes. Sometimes, when Maya looked at her, she saw Adrian, the tilt of his chin, the stubborn set of his jaw, and her chest ached with memories she tried not to remember. She'd tell herself, "That man no longer exists. The one who loved me died the night he stopped believing." But even lies spoken with conviction can't erase the truth beneath them. Every now and then she'd dream of him, standing under that same rain, searching for her too late. She'd wake up crying and hold Ariana tighter. Meanwhile, far away in the glittering heart of New York, Adrian Knight's world had turned hollow. His empire grew, profits soared, but the silence between victories became unbearable. He tried to drown his guilt in work, in deals, in luxury that couldn't fill the echo she left behind. At first he told himself she was a liar, a woman who fooled him for his name. But late at night, when the city lights dimmed and the world quieted, he would hear her voice again. Skin color doesn't define hearts. It would come to him like a whisper through his dreams, haunting, tender, impossible to silence. He sometimes wandered into her old office at Knight Enterprises, still untouched after all these years. Her coffee mug sat on the shelf, a faint ring of lipstick still staining the rim. He had tried to throw it away once, but his hand refused. Instead, it stayed there, a relic of something pure he'd destroyed with his own pride. His mother never spoke of Maya again, though sometimes he'd catch her watching him with quiet satisfaction, as if she'd saved him from disaster. But Adrian didn't feel saved. He felt empty. Some nights he'd stand at his balcony, whiskey glass in hand, staring down at the city she once loved. In the wind, he'd imagine her laugh, soft, distant, forgiving. 18 years passed like a slow storm. Ariana grew from a baby into a young woman, and Maya worked herself to exhaustion to keep her world safe and small. They had no idea that fate had begun circling back, quietly, deliberately. And on one ordinary night, when Adrian finally managed to sleep after another long day at the office, the silence broke. His phone vibrated on the nightstand. He groaned, rubbing his eyes, reaching for it without looking. The screen glowed in the dark. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but some strange pulse in his chest made him answer. "Hello?" Static crackled. Then a hesitant breath on the other end. "Mr. Knight?" The voice was soft, trembling, aged but hauntingly familiar. He froze. The world seemed to still around him. "Yes," he managed, his throat tightening. Who is this? A long pause, then faintly, This is Maya Brown. His hand went numb. The phone nearly slipped from his grasp. For a second, his heartbeat drowned out every other sound in the room. Adrian sat frozen in the dark, disbelief twisting through him. Her voice, the one he thought he'd never hear again, was trembling on the line. And before he could speak, before he could breathe, she whispered, Adrian, I need your help. The phone trembled in Adrian's hand, his heartbeat thundering louder than the rain striking his penthouse windows. For years, silence had been his companion, a punishment he'd convinced himself he deserved. But now, that voice, that calm, trembling voice. Maya, he whispered, as if saying her name might break the fragile thread connecting them. On the other end, her breath hitched. Then came the words that fractured everything he thought he knew. It's about our daughter. The room went still. His reflection on the glass looked pale, almost ghostly, as if all color had drained from his world. Our... What? He rasped, gripping the phone tighter. She's sick, Maya said, her tone steady but layered with exhaustion. Ariana needs surgery. I didn't know who else to call. A long pause filled the space between their worlds, 18 years of pain, pride, and unfinished love packed into silence. Then Adrian spoke, his voice low and breaking. Where are you? Her reply came faintly, naming a small town hospital he'd never heard of. The line clicked dead before he could say anything else. Adrian didn't waste a second. He grabbed his keys, his mind a storm of disbelief and denial. His car tore through the sleeping city, headlights slicing the fog as memories collided with the hum of the engine. He saw her smile, the one that had melted his walls. He saw the ring he'd once placed on her trembling hand. And then he saw her tears, the ones he caused the night he let her go. Now she had a daughter. Their daughter. Hours later he arrived. The hospital loomed under flickering lights, humble and quiet. Worlds away from the luxury he called life. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and rain-soaked air. At the reception desk, he asked for Maya Brown. His voice almost failed on her name. The nurse pointed down the hall. She's in ICU. You can't go in, but you can wait by the window. He followed the corridor, each step heavier than the last. And there she was. Maya stood by a glass wall, her posture tired but unbroken. Her hair was longer now, streaked faintly with age, her eyes deeper, wiser, still holding that same quiet dignity that once disarmed him. She wore no diamonds, no designer labels, just simplicity, strength. For a long moment he didn't move. He simply watched her, afraid that stepping closer would make her vanish again. Maya, he finally breathed. She turned. The look in her eyes wasn't anger. It was something colder, something carved by years of surviving without him. Adrian, she said evenly, thank you for coming. He swallowed hard, struggling for words. You said, our daughter? Her gaze flicked to the glass window behind her. Yes, Ariana. He took a hesitant step forward, voice trembling. Why didn't you... I didn't call for you, she interrupted. I called for her. The words struck him harder than any slap. She continued, her voice calm but cutting. You have questions. You have regrets. But right now she needs help, not history. Adrian nodded slowly. He wanted to argue, to ask how she survived, where she went, how their daughter had grown up without him. But Maya's eyes silenced him. She wasn't here for reconciliation. She was here to save her child. From the corner of the corridor, a nurse approached with an update, whispering softly to Maya. Her hand trembled slightly as she signed a form. Adrian watched, his chest tightening with a guilt so raw it burned. Maya, he said again, quieter this time. Why didn't you tell me she existed? Her answer came like a whisper meant only for him. Because you told me to get out. He winced, the memory of that night flashing through him. The rain, her tears, his rage, the cruel sound of divorce papers sliding across the table. She turned back toward the glass, her voice softening just a little. Ariana's all I had left. I couldn't risk her being treated like me. Adrian stepped closer, his reflection beside hers now. Two people staring into the same window, but seeing completely different lives. "What happened to her?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Maya's jaw tightened. "A heart condition. Congenital. The doctors say she needs surgery immediately. I can't afford it." Adrian's throat closed. A lifetime of money, power, and deals. And none of it mattered now. "I'll pay," he said instantly. "Whatever it costs." Maya didn't even look at him. "I don't want your guilt to be her cure. Just help her because she deserves to live." The nurse returned, telling them they could see Oriana through the observation glass. Together they walked the narrow hallway until they reached the ICU window. Adrian's steps faltered. His breath caught. On the other side of the glass, a teenage girl lay unconscious beneath white sheets. Tubes ran from her wrist, and a faint beep echoed in rhythm with her heart monitor. But it wasn't the machines that froze him. It was her face, the delicate curve of her jaw, the black waves of her hair, the faint dimple near her left cheek, identical to his own. For 18 years, he'd searched for peace in wealth, in power, in empty rooms filled with noise. But peace had a face, and she looked exactly like him. Maya stood silently beside him, her eyes glistening. He turned toward her, but she didn't meet his gaze. She kept her attention fixed on the girl, whispering a mother's prayer only silence could carry. "Please," she said quietly, "just let her live." Adrian's fingers pressed against the glass, trembling. His reflection merged with his daughter's image, two worlds colliding, the man who destroyed love and the life born from it. He wanted to speak, to promise everything, to beg forgiveness, but his voice was gone. The nurse approached again, urgency in her tone. "Mr. Knight, we'll need your consent for the surgery. It's risky, but it's her only chance." He blinked. "My consent?" Maya hesitated, her voice low. "You're her father, Adrian." The words hit him harder than truth itself. As the doctor preps the operating room, Adrian's signature hovers above the consent form. Just as he's about to sign, the monitor inside the ICU lets out a long, piercing beep. Ariana's heartbeat falters. The pen drops from his hand. The sterile hum of machines filled the room. The faint rhythm of the monitor echoed through Adrian's chest, like a haunting melody, his heartbeat syncing with the slow, fragile pulse of the girl behind the glass. Ariana lay there, pale and still, her breath shallow, her hand motionless beside the tangle of tubes. Maya stood beside the window, arms crossed tightly, holding herself together as if the smallest crack might let the pain pour out. Adrian couldn't look away. That face, that nose, that hint of a frown, it was his reflection on her. He felt time bend, the weight of lost years pressing down. When the doctor approached, clipboard in hand, Adrian's voice came out rough, unsteady. "How bad is it?" The doctor hesitated. "She needs immediate surgery, but there's a complication. We need a rare blood type, AB negative. It's almost impossible to find on short notice." Maya's lips parted. "Please, there must be someone," the doctor interrupted gently. "We ran the compatibility tests from her file. There's only one match." Adrian frowned. "Who?" The doctor's eyes lifted to meet his. "You, Mr. Knight." For a second, the world went still. Maya's gaze darted toward him, searching his face, measuring his reaction. He blinked slowly, his throat tight. "I'll do it. Whatever it takes." Minutes later, he sat in a small, white room, the sterile sting of alcohol brushing his arm as the nurse prepared the needle. He stared at the bag that would carry his blood, the same blood that had created her, the same blood now saving her. When the needle slid in, he barely flinched. He only watched the red stream flow, thick and endless, as if every drop was washing away 18 years of ignorance. The nurse murmured, "You should lie back, sir." But he shook his head. "I need to see her." Through the glass, he saw Maya lean near Ariana's bed, whispering something. Maybe a prayer. Maybe a memory. Adrian's lips parted to breathe, but the air wouldn't come. The guilt felt alive inside him. His blood filled the bag, then the line, and soon flowed into Ariana's veins. The doctor adjusted the rate, watching carefully. "She'll stabilize," the doctor said softly. "Her body's responding well." Adrian exhaled, shoulders trembling. Maya turned toward him then, her expression unreadable. Gratitude and anger lived together in her eyes. When she spoke, her voice carried both steel and sorrow. "Thank you," he swallowed, his mouth dry. "All these years, you never told me." She looked away. "Would you have believed me?" Her words cut deeper than any knife. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out, because she was right. He wouldn't have believed her. Not then. He would have believed his mother, the woman who had built his world with lies wrapped in pearls and charm. The silence between them stretched. The faint beeping of the machines filled the space like a clock ticking down the truth. When the doctor excused himself, the nurse lingered near the door, sorting files. Something made Adrian glance her way. Maybe it was guilt, maybe instinct. The nurse, a woman in her 50s with gentle eyes, looked at him hesitantly. "Mr. Knight, may I ask something?" He nodded faintly. She lowered her voice. "Your mother, Evelyn Knight, she used to come here, didn't she?" His brow furrowed. "Years ago, yes. Why?" The nurse shifted uncomfortably. "I remember her. She came once, around the time a young woman named Maya Brown had a test done. Mrs. Knight was very clear she wanted to handle the reports personally." Adrian froze. Maya turned, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" The nurse hesitated, glancing between them. "She said it was a family matter. We didn't question her. She was persuasive." Adrian felt the ground tilt beneath him. His pulse pounded in his ears. "Handle the reports." His mother's words from years ago came back. "I fixed it for you, darling. You're safe now." "Safe from what? From Maya? From the truth?" His voice cracked. "You're certain it was her?" The nurse nodded slowly. "I never forget faces. She said she was protecting her son from a scandal." Adrian's breath hitched. He looked at Maya, the woman he had destroyed with his pride. Her expression had gone blank, as if she'd expected it all along. He whispered, "Maya." She didn't look at him. "Don't." The way she said it, low, final, silenced him. He wanted to reach for her, to explain, to fall to his knees and beg her to see the regret in his eyes. But the weight of his guilt was heavier than any apology. Instead, he turned away, gripping the wall to steady himself. Every lie his mother ever told replayed in his head like ghosts circling him. He had condemned Maya for deceit, while the real deceit had worn his family name. The nurse quietly left, closing the door behind her. The room felt too small for both of them. His regret and her pain could not breathe in the same space. Maya spoke softly, her eyes on Ariana's still form. "If you want to help, stay. But don't think this changes anything." He nodded, unable to speak. He sat by the window through the night, watching the faint glow of the monitors. Each flicker of the heartbeat felt like redemption, fragile but real. At dawn, when the doctor came to check on Ariana, she was stable, her color returning, her body fighting back. Adrian pressed his forehead to the glass, whispering something only he could hear. "I'm sorry. For everything." Maya heard it, but said nothing. Her silence was both forgiveness and punishment. When the doctor left, Adrian stepped outside for air. The sky was gray, the clouds heavy. He took out his phone, his hands shaking, and dialed the number he'd avoided for years. It rang once, twice. Then Evelyn answered, her voice calm, familiar, venomous. "Adrian, darling, it's late. Is something wrong?" His tone was low, trembling. "What did you do to Maya?" A pause, the faint sound of a wine glass touching crystal. Then her voice, smooth, cold. "Exactly what you asked me to." His breath hitched. "What are you talking about?" "I protected you from ruin," she said. "You wanted her gone. Remember, so I made sure she couldn't destroy your name." He closed his eyes, the memory flashing, his angry words, his prideful silence. And now, his mother's confession echoing through the line. Adrian's voice breaks into a whisper. "You switched the reports, didn't you?" Evelyn exhales, almost bored. "Oh, darling, you always hated the truth." The call cuts off, and the screen goes black in his trembling hand. The air in the night mansion was cold, polished, and painfully silent. Adrian stood in the center of his mother's study, the forged medical reports trembling in his hand. He had replayed her words on the phone all night. "I protected you." The phrase echoed like poison. Evelyn Knight sat behind her mahogany desk, pearls shining against her neck, her expression calm, calculated, unreadable. Adrian slammed the folder down. Papers scattered like broken glass. "These were fake, weren't they?" Evelyn didn't flinch. "Watch your tone." "My tone?" His voice cracked with restrained fury. "You forged medical records to destroy my marriage, to make me believe Maya couldn't have children." Her eyes narrowed. "I saved you from scandal, Adrian, from a woman who didn't belong in our world." He leaned forward, knuckles pressing into the desk. "She was my world." The words shocked even him. The silence afterward was deafening. Evelyn rose slowly, like a queen rising from her throne. "You were blinded by infatuation. That girl saw an opportunity and took it." "She didn't take anything." His voice roared through the room, shattering the calm she wore like armor. "You took everything from me, my marriage, my peace, my child." For the first time, Evelyn faltered. A flicker of guilt softened her perfect composure. "I did what any mother would do," she whispered. "No, mother," he said quietly, shaking his head. "You did what a coward does, control, manipulate, destroy." He pushed the papers toward her. The word infertile glared up from the page, a scar carved in ink. "You used this lie to break a woman who loved me, and I believed you." Evelyn's lips trembled. "You came to me that night. You were angry, ashamed. You said she had deceived you. I only helped you see reason." "Reason?" He laughed bitterly. "You forged tests. You stole 18 years of my daughter's life." Her pearl necklace glinted as her breath quickened. "I wanted to protect the Knight name." He stared at her with something colder than hate. "Disappointment. The Knight name means nothing without honor." The clock ticked loudly between them. Outside, rain pressed against the tall windows, the same way it had all those years ago when he'd thrown Maya out. Evelyn sank into her chair, suddenly smaller than she'd ever appeared. "You'll never understand what it's like to lose control of your child." "I understand now," he said, voice hollow. "Because I lost mine. Because of you." He turned to leave, but her voice cracked behind him. "Adrian, where are you going?" "To make things right," he said without turning back. Her hand trembled as she reached for him, but he was already gone. For the first time, Evelyn Knight realized she had lost not just a battle, but her son. Across town, the hospital room was quiet. Maya sat beside Ariana's bed, fingers combing through her daughter's hair. The machines hummed softly, steady now, like a promise. Maya's eyes were red from sleepless nights, but her resolve was fierce. She had endured betrayal, poverty, and loneliness. She could endure walking away again. When the doctor said Ariana could be discharged soon, Maya forced a smile. "We'll start fresh, sweetheart, somewhere far from here." That evening, she packed their few belongings into a worn suitcase. The sunset spilled through the window, coloring the white walls gold. Ariana, though still pale, had energy in her gaze. "Mom," she whispered, watching Maya fold clothes carefully. "He helped us." Maya's hands froze for a moment. "He did what any decent man would do." "He's more than that," Ariana murmured. "He looked at me like he knew me." Maya exhaled deeply. "You have his eyes. Of course he did." She tried to keep her tone steady, but every word felt heavy. "We don't need his money. We don't need his pity. We already survived once. We'll do it again." Ariana watched her quietly. The conviction in her mother's voice was strong, but her eyes told another story. A quiet ache she couldn't hide. Later that night, while Maya stepped out to collect discharge papers, Ariana opened the small wooden box her mother kept hidden in her bag. Inside were old photographs, faded, creased with time. One showed a younger Adrian and Maya on their wedding day. He looked different, softer, smiling as though the world had stopped for her. Another photo showed them standing by a car, his hand gently on her waist, their faces lit with laughter. Ariana traced his image with her finger, her chest tightening with curiosity. "He looks kind," she whispered to herself. She didn't remember him, didn't know his voice or his scent. But something deep inside told her that part of her had always missed him, even without knowing why. She placed the photos back, careful not to crease them further. When Maya returned, Ariana closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. That night, Maya sat beside her, holding her daughter's hand under the sterile hospital light. She whispered softly, "You're all I'll ever need." But outside the window, the city lights shimmered like restless memories, as if fate was far from finished with them. The next morning, as Maya zipped the last suitcase shut, Ariana lifted one of the photographs, her voice trembling. "Mom, I want to know my father." Maya froze, her breath catching in her throat, because the one thing she feared most had just begun. The next evening arrives with the sky heavy with rain, the same way it did the night everything fell apart. Maya stands by the window of her small house, her heart tight in her chest as headlights sweep across the driveway. She doesn't need to look twice to know who it is. 18 years have changed him. The sharp arrogance that once cloaked him is gone. Adrian Knight steps out of his car, not as the millionaire who once ruled New York, but as a man stripped bare by regret. He hesitates at her gate, clutching the small bouquet in his hand, white lilies, her favorite. The same flowers he once sent after their first company dinner, back when everything between them still glowed with innocence. His reflection in her window shows a man who barely recognizes himself. Maya takes a deep breath, opens the door, and faces him. For a long heartbeat, neither speaks. The years hang between them like ghosts, thick and unspoken. His voice cracks first. "I can't fix the past, Maya, but please, let me know her. Let me know our daughter." Her throat tightens. She wants to scream at him, to remind him how easily he threw her away, but the exhaustion in his eyes stops her. "You think you can just walk back in?" she asks softly. 18 years, Adrian. She's grown without you." "I know," he whispers, his gaze dropping. "And every single one of those years was my punishment." Behind her, the curtain shifts slightly. A young face peers out. Ariana, cautious, curious, her eyes wide and trembling. She looks between them, sensing something monumental. Maya glances over her shoulder and sighs. She deserves to choose, she murmurs, stepping aside. Adrian's heart nearly stops when he sees his daughter up close for the first time. Her eyes are his, blue, intense, alive, but everything else, the warmth, the grace, the quiet strength, belongs to Maya. Ariana clutches the doorframe. You're him. He nods slowly. Yes, I'm your father, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want to know who you are. There's no grand reunion, no cinematic hug. Just silence. Heavy. Real. Ariana looks at her mother for reassurance, then back at him. Mom said you were busy, she says softly. Too busy for us. Maya swallows hard, tears threatening. I said you didn't need him to be strong. Adrian's shoulders sag. She was right, he admits. You didn't need me. But I needed you. I just didn't know it until now. Something fragile begins to shift. The next few days unfold slowly, cautiously. Adrian stays nearby, not imposing, just waiting. He brings breakfast one morning, leaves it on the porch. Another day, he offers to drive Ariana to her part-time art class. Maya watches through the window as her daughter, hesitant but smiling, accepts. At the park, Adrian and Ariana sit on a bench, watching ducks glide across the pond. She sketches quietly, and he sits beside her, unsure how to fill the silence. You draw beautifully, he says. She shrugs, hiding her blush. Mom taught me. She said you used to doodle on napkins during meetings. He laughs, the sound rusty but sincere. I did. She used to scold me for it. A small smile breaks across Ariana's face. The wall between them begins to crumble, brick by brick. They start walking in the evenings, short strolls at first, then longer ones. Adrian learns how she laughs when something truly amuses her, how she squints when concentrating. Every habit, every small trait, feels like a gift he doesn't deserve to unwrap. Maya watches from afar, conflicted. She sees the tenderness in Adrian's gestures, the unspoken apology in his every movement. Yet part of her still burns with old wounds, the rain-soaked night when he turned her away, the way his pride crushed her truth. One night after dinner, she steps onto the porch. Adrian is sitting on the steps, staring at the stars. She likes you, she says quietly. He turns, almost afraid to believe it. I wasn't sure. You shouldn't be, she replies. She doesn't forgive easily. He nods. I wonder where she learned that from. She allows herself a small, bittersweet smile. Maybe from me, or maybe from what you taught me. Adrian looks at her, guilt flickering across his face. Maya, I can't say sorry enough. I'm not asking you to, she says, folding her arms. Just don't disappear again. She's not a project you can fix. She's a person you'll have to earn. I will, he promises. Every day, if I have to. For the first time in years, there's a truce, fragile but real. They share quiet moments, coffee at dawn, laughter in the kitchen when Ariana burns pancakes. He starts visiting more often, not as a CEO, but as a father learning how to love from scratch. Each time he leaves, Ariana hugs him a little tighter. Each time he returns, Maya's walls lower just a little more. But she doesn't let herself forget who he once was, a man who could destroy her with a signature. Weeks pass. Adrian helps Ariana prepare for an art exhibition at her school. He watches proudly as she paints a portrait, a faceless man standing in the rain, holding out his hand toward a fading shadow. When Maya sees it, tears pool in her eyes. Ariana only says, "It's about forgiveness." That night, Adrian lingers at the door longer than usual. The air hums with words unsaid. You did a good job, Maya, he says quietly. She's extraordinary. Maya nods, her expression unreadable. She's my reason for surviving, and mine for changing, he admits. For a long time, they just stand there, the porch light flickering between them like a heartbeat. He looks at her differently now, not as something he lost, but as someone who saved him by walking away. You know, she murmurs, almost smiling, Ariana said you make her feel safe. He exhales shakily. That means everything. Maya's gaze softens, but her voice remains firm. Then don't ruin it this time. I won't. The air grows quiet. He starts to step back toward his car, but she stops him with a whisper. Adrian. He turns. She looks at him. Really looks. You're forgiven, she says slowly, the words trembling but true. But you'll have to prove you've changed. He nods, emotion raw in his throat. I will. As he turns to leave, his eyes catch on the faint glint of silver around her neck. A thin chain, hanging from it, the ring he once gave her. Their wedding ring. Adrian freezes, realization flooding through him. Maya still wears the ring. Not on her finger, but close to her heart. His voice falters as he whispers to himself, maybe she never stopped loving me. The night after Adrian saw the ring, sleep refused to find him. He sat alone in his car, the sound of rain tapping against the windshield like the echo of his past mistakes. The memory of that silver chain burned in his mind, a fragile thread that tied him to the life he once shattered. The ring wasn't just metal. It was proof that somewhere, beneath years of pain and distance, Maya hadn't fully let him go. He drove aimlessly through quiet streets until dawn painted the sky in pale gold. He stopped at a florist, buying the same lilies she loved, then at a small bakery for Ariana's favorite pastries. For the first time in 18 years, he felt a reason to wake up that wasn't tied to money or meetings. It was the need to make things right, not with grand gestures, but with quiet consistency. When he reached their house, Maya was already outside, watering the plants. Her brown skin glowed under the soft morning light. Her hair, loosely braided, framed a face that had learned to live without him. And yet, in the way she glanced up, he saw a flicker of warmth that gave him hope. You're early, she said, voice even, though her eyes betrayed surprise. I couldn't sleep, he admitted, holding out the bag. Breakfast. For you both. Maya hesitated, but eventually took it. You don't have to do this every day. I want to, he replied softly. It's not about obligation anymore, Maya. It's about time, the years I owe you. Inside, Ariana laughed as she saw the pastries. You remembered, she said, taking one. I'm trying, Adrian smiled, sitting across from her. Trying to learn what I missed. She grinned, teasing. You've got a lot of homework then. They ate together, laughter threading through the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. It was imperfect, hesitant, fragile, but real. Later that afternoon, Maya watched as Adrian helped Ariana set up her art booth for a local fair. His hands were steady, patient, his eyes filled with quiet pride. Watching him like this, she felt a strange ache, not of anger, but of bittersweet recognition. This was the man she once believed he could be. When the fair ended, Adrian walked beside her through the fading light. I've been thinking, he said quietly, about what forgiveness really means. She looked at him. It means letting go of hate, not of memory. He nodded. Then I'll spend the rest of my life earning both your trust and your memory. They stopped by the lake near her home. The water shimmered with reflections of the setting sun. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Adrian turned to her. You kept the ring, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya's breath caught. I couldn't throw it away. It reminded me of who you were and who I once hoped you'd become. He swallowed hard. And now? She hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. Now I see glimpses of that man, but I'm still afraid he'll disappear. I won't, he said, stepping closer. I lost everything once because I listened to pride and hate. I won't make that mistake again. Not with you, not with her. She looked into his eyes, the same eyes that once held power over her heart. But now they weren't cold. They were human, humble. You've changed, Adrian, she said softly. But change needs time. Trust grows slow. I can wait, he whispered, as long as it takes. They stood in silence, the soft hum of crickets around them, the air thick with something that felt almost like peace. Ariana's laughter echoed faintly from behind, a reminder that love in its truest form was never lost, only delayed. Weeks turned into months. Adrian didn't rush, didn't demand. He simply showed up. At school, recitals, at dinners, at quiet evenings where he read while Maya painted. Slowly, the rhythm of their lives began to intertwine again, cautious but steady. One evening, as autumn painted the world in shades of amber, Maya sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Adrian joined her, handing her a cup of tea. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was companionable, healing. She's applying to art school, Maya said with a proud smile. Our little girl. Adrian's eyes softened. You did everything right, Maya. Everything I should have helped with. We both did what we could, she replied gently. The past hurt us, but it also made her strong. He looked at her, admiration plain in his gaze. And it made you unbreakable, Maya turned to him. It made us wiser, she corrected. Their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. The warmth that lingered wasn't desperate. It was earned, hard-fought. Later that night, when he was about to leave, Ariana stopped him at the door. You're staying for dinner tomorrow, right? Adrian smiled. If your mom lets me. Maya, standing behind her daughter, gave a quiet nod. She will. It wasn't a declaration of love, not yet, but it was permission, a chance. That night, as he drove home under the silver wash of moonlight, Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Peace. Real, quiet peace. He glanced at the ring on his finger, the one he never took off even after the divorce. For years it had been a symbol of failure. Now it felt like a promise renewed. He whispered into the night as if speaking to the wind itself. This time, I'll be the man she believed I was. The road stretched endlessly ahead, but for the first time he wasn't running from his past. He was driving toward it, to face it, to rebuild it, to cherish it. The morning would come, and with it, another chance to prove that love, even broken, buried, and bruised, could still find its way back home. At sunrise, Maya stands by the window, watching his car disappear down the road. Her hand drifts to the chain around her neck, the ring still glinting softly against her skin. For the first time, she unclasps it and slips it onto her finger again, whispering, Maybe tomorrow we'll start again.